Don't invest in certifications. Build relationships. Early on in my career, I thought chasing the certs was the right thing to do. I got a PAP, I got a Discipline Agile Scrum Master, I got 4 Workday Pro certs. Not a single one of them is why I'm in the role that I am in today.
I did get a chance to listen to your episode with Keith. So that was like really, really fascinating, especially like your background in integrations and just more on the technical, like IT end of things.
That's where I came from.
Yeah.
All on the
Yeah.
IT side originally, doing COBOL coding for an HRIS company back in the day, which had its challenges, but yeah.
I'm sure. But yeah, I'm sure a lot has stayed the same, especially from like a first principles perspective. But yeah, I'm sure a lot has
Things have
changed as
changed a
well, right?
lot for me. It's funny. I was talking to my son about this actually the other day, and I told him, like, originally, like, we were code jockeys. That's what we did. We wrote code. We had to tease out Pennsylvania local taxes. We had to
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
do all the programming Pennsylvania local taxes into a payroll engine. That was awesome.
Nightmare. Yeah.
And we had, even to make it even more fun, the client was Wawa,
Oh,
and
okay.
people
Yeah.
moved store to store. So Wawa is now a Workday customer, but this was before that they were a Workday customer. So
Yeah.
we were actually people would move from store to store, and the payroll manager was the payroll and benefits manager was very adamant that, like, okay, if the person worked for 3 hours in Philadelphia, they have to pay city wage tax, but when they go back to their suburban store, they have to pay their 1.25% or whatever it
Oh
was.
my
It was
goodness.
such I mean, Workday does it now, but this was 15 years ago. We had to program it from nothing. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was nobody doing that except for the Eagles and the Phillies. Those
Oh
were the
my
only
gosh.
organizations doing local taxes based on where you
Location
were
worked.
working at that, based on location work. Nobody was doing it up until then. So yeah, it was a very complicated project.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't envy you in any way, shape, or form, but I think that experience is like fascinating, especially getting into the Workday world, right? So
Oh yeah, it helped.
how how did you end up learning about Workday and like moving into the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was I've been in HR systems for 20 years, which is kind of a point of pride and a cry for help as well. And like I said, when I started, it was HRIS was the person who knows the access database, and then it was SQL, and then it changed, and I worked my way through the ecosystem. But before I started Workday World, I was doing a stint at Phenom doing
Oh, wow.
implementations. So it was a very early. Phenom had just got their Series A round, so they just got funded. I was the last hire for the company before Phenom was iMomentous, and they were functionally doing Oracle Taleo mobile career sites. That's essentially what they were doing before they launched as Phenom.
Wow.
And I had their first Workday customer. And it was Citrix. Citrix was their first Workday customer, and it was right around the time of Workday 25. And what was really cool about it was, here's this ecosystem where nobody knew APIs. Nobody knew anything about anything because Workday was recruiting was basically new. So now we're getting between ourselves and Citrix, getting Workday on the phone, Workday product managers, and meeting Workday product managers and building the infrastructure that basically functionally still exists today, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
But that got me into Workday because I got to see the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And startup life with a 2-year-old at the time was challenging. And it got to the point where I said, you know what? I really want to try this Workday thing. And that's how I got into the ecosystem. So I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to land a job with a company that was embedding technologists into their functional areas. So we weren't in IT, we were like kind of in HR, but we were all embedded. So I was embedded in comp and recruiting, like in the
Wow.
team doing Workday work. It was a very different model when I started at Workday, but it was really exciting, really
Yeah,
exciting,
absolutely.
very much the Wild West almost.
Well, I'm sure. I am sure. Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to hear like your background because you do come from such a technical background
Mm-hmm.
and yet here you are finding yourself in the midst of all of this functional work and
Mm-hmm.
within these functional teams as well. It is really fascinating. So, a little bit of about my background as well.
Mhm.
I got my start in HR, but while I was working in an HR call center specifically, it was actually with a company called AmerisourceBergen.
I know them.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Local
worked in their
companies,
HR
yep.
call center, and that's how I initially got my HR
Mhm,
start.
mhm.
But during my lunch breaks and, during any of my free time, I was actually teaching myself JavaScript. I was teaching myself how to code.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. And then in my next role, I learned SQL because
Mhm.
that was just
You
beneficial
gotta.
for that role. So yeah, I've always loved these two passions, HR and technology. And yeah, I can see where all of that like SQL experience and coding experience has played a role for me to better understand Workday, right? So I'm sure that you feel the same way. And it's cool. It's cool to be able to translate and move between both of these very, very different worlds, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is a key skill that you have to learn that I've learned over time. Call it the kitchen table test. If I can have a conversation with my wife and my son about technology and they come out nodding their heads and they kind of understand it, and I didn't use the word calculated field or business process definition, then I'm probably doing it right.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
that has been a core tenet of mine since I started in the Workday ecosystem, because you have to translate all this complex technical stuff into something that HR can understand.
Yes.
My wife's
Yeah.
in my wife's a programmer, but she's in pharmaceuticals,
Okay.
pharmaceutical like technical programming, and my son's 11.
Yeah.
So if they can figure it out and understand what I'm saying, then probably I'm explaining it to the CHRO appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love getting to see your actual conversations, through your newsletter.
Oh,
So
we have so much fun.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I would love to be a fly on the wall of those conversations because, yeah, there's just so much to take away from those conversations. But yeah, I think this is a perfect segue into my next question here, which is
Mhm,
about your Substack. So your
mhm.
Substack is called the Department of First Things First and has easily become one of my favorite reads, in the Workday ecosystem. So talk to me about where the concept of first things first came from and what are some of the conversations that you're hoping to spark with your Substack?
Yeah. The name came from frustration, really. There was a period of time at my prior job, I was sitting in meetings and we'd spend, like an hour debating about AI vendors and yeah, and Illuminate and this and that and all this Workday technical stuff. And here I am looking at the supervisor org structure of my tenant. I'm saying, oh my gosh, this is a mess.
Yeah.
And if we can't get the org chart right, what are we doing with
Yeah,
talking about agents?
absolutely.
So the first things first thing became a mantra. Clean your data before you buy the robot. Fix your security groups before you launch a chatbot. But it's not the sexy stuff, but at least it's the stuff that actually determines whether or not the sexy stuff works.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. I love that. I love that, especially in this day and age. Honestly, I feel like I'm probably the leader in this area. Very, very guilty of this. But yeah, I'm just chasing after those shiny objects, Yeah,
We all do, though.
yeah, yeah. And just forgetting about the foundational work that requires, right? So I love that. And I feel like I need people in my life just like you, to kind of bring me back down to earth and keep the first things first. So I
Hmm.
love that. So you refer to yourself as a pragmatic futurist. And again, just so spot on. But with that mindset, you cover a variety of different topics. Um, I think my brain tends to work to generalize concepts and generalize people. And I'm not going to lie to you, you're like a hard one to pin down, but here's my attempt, right? In a lot of ways, it feels like you are architecting future Workday architects. How does that resonate with you? Like, is that spot on or
Yeah,
how
I
does that
really
differ in your
like
brain?
that framing.
Okay. All
I
right.
really do. Yeah. I think what I'm trying to do is give practitioners permission to think a little bit bigger.
I love that.
A lot of us have come up through the trenches. We do configurations. We're really good at solving the ticket in front of us, but nobody's teaching us how to zoom out.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody's teaching us how to walk into a room full of VPs with competing priorities and get them to agree on anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if the newsletter helps make that shift from like I fix the calculated field to I design the system to prevent the calculated field from breaking in the first place, then I think the writing is doing its job.
Yes, absolutely.
That's kind of how I'm approaching it.
For sure. Yeah. And I can definitely vouch for that. It
Well, thank you. That's good to hear because I question it sometimes.
I I'm sure. I am sure. Yeah. I think I mean you nailed it, right? It is so easy to focus on the ticket in front of you and the queue in front of you and just try to, crush out as many tickets as possible and really lock in there into the details, into the weeds. But yeah, I think a lot of the time it's just helpful for somebody to pull us out of that routine, pull us out of that habit, and get us to look at the big picture of what we're doing long term with the system. And I think even more importantly, like why. So yeah, I feel like your writing is constantly like breaking me out of my routine, breaking me out of my perspective, and helping me to kind of raise my hand a little bit more in meetings and ask the question of like, hey, why are we doing this? Why is this a requirement? Wait a second, before we get to that, like what needs to be done, foundationally to make that
Mm-hmm.
happen or make that successful. So that's been incredibly helpful, with your writing specifically.
That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, listen, I understand. Like sometimes it does feel like we're talking into the void in a lot of ways, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but trust me, it is not falling on deaf ears at all. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. So I appreciate you taking the time to make that happen.
I appreciate you for reading, and I have to say it's funny that we're having this conversation now because I went and looked back at my subscriber count. You were my first subscriber, so thank
No
you.
way.
You were.
No way. That's awesome. Oh, that's amazing. Well, I mean, that just goes to show you, like, man, right away, like resonated. I think I can see where, like, in a lot of ways, like you've kind of blazed a trail for someone like me, someone who doesn't necessarily feel fully technical or fully functional, someone who feels maybe a little bit overlooked in a lot of ways, in terms
Mhm,
of my
mhm.
talent and my potential and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I saw, some of your early work and just thought, yeah, this
Much
is for
appreciated.
me. Yeah,
Much appreciated, really.
yeah, absolutely. So let's get into some of these first things first type of principles, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm really, really curious to hear some of your perspective on these topics. So from a UI perspective, what are some of the main issues with ERP UIs and what are some easy ways that companies can start to improve their employees' experience through these systems and specifically in Workday?
Yeah, so I think the core issue is that ERPs are built for compliance, not for humans. And that's the job. It's totally fine. It's the right thing to do. You have to build something for compliance because compliance is partially our job. We got to make
Absolutely.
sure your paychecks are right. We got to make sure nobody goes to jail. We're asking end users to navigate a system that was designed for administrators and
Yes.
then being shocked when they don't like it.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think of it and I posted about this before. I think of it kind of like a layer cake.
Mm.
Workday is structural foundation. ERPs are structural foundation, the load bearing wall. You don't demolish the foundation because the paint color's ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
That's where like the when you need to, you put that experience layer on top and you're really seeing that with some of the third party stuff and also with some of the way Workday is going with the Sun acquisition and they're building experience layers to help. I'm not going to say obfuscate, but at least minimize the fact that I have to go into another system to see my paycheck, or I have to
Yes.
go into another system to take time off, or I have to go into the stuff that especially ESS and MSS stuff, the easier we make that for users, time off requests, pay stubs, open enrollment, better off we're going to be as architects.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I love the fact that you do still advocate for thinking about UI in these systems though, because there are maybe hidden or overlooked ways to do that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And again, going back to your earlier point, having Justin, go through that and try to accomplish a very vague or very seemingly simple task in the system to see if he can accomplish it or to see if he runs into any roadblocks, like all of that is happening in real time, whether we realize it or not. So I love that. Are there any like quick win things that you feel like every tenant should probably look into this or should probably do this?
Yeah, easy wins. I think start with the stuff that people touch every day. Like I
Yeah.
said, time off requests, pay stubs, open enrollment. If those flows are clunky, that's literally your end user's entire impression of Workday.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And I'll give you an example. A perfect example of this is I was doing taxes a couple weeks ago, and my wife's like, I don't know how to find my paycheck in Workday. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So now, being the Workday admin, have to sit down next to her, help with the details. Not super complicated, but the fact of the matter is, if you can have like the most elegant compensation structure on the planet, but nobody cares because they have to click 14 times to request a sick day.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So the two things that I've started with, and I started with this at a previous role that were big helps for at least the bare minimum, guidance, workspace, and help.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Super underrated tools that orgs haven't touched. Embedded videos, contextual help, simplify your landing pages. Is it a full experience layer? No. But at
Yeah.
least it's a start, and you can do it tomorrow without having to try something new.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to jump back to a previous point
No,
that you
no,
made, but
love it.
yeah, I think Sana is going to be a game changer, has the potential to be a game changer for the
Hmm.
Workday experience, especially from a end user experience. There's just something so special about AI's ability to translate data, from one format to another. As annoying as it can be, especially when creating like things like condition roles or calculated fields, the way that data is mapped out on the back end of Workday is like beautiful and beautiful from a programming
Works better than
perspective.
most.
Yes, I can appreciate how it's, structured and laid out and all that, right? But again, it's structured from the perspective of compliance
Hmm.
and not necessarily like end user experience. So I am really optimistic about the potential of AI being able to translate, here's a good user interface experience, and we can still keep our structured data on the back end, right? So
Hmm.
really, really excited about that. So let's move on to integrations because this
Hmm.
is a place that I tend to live a lot. Like, what are some first things first principles from the integration side of things? What are some best practices that you've seen? Do you think that like everyone should aim to have middleware at some point in the future? What are your thoughts about all that?
So yeah, hot take. Eventually, yeah.
Okay, all right,
But
cool.
but honestly, middleware for the sake of middleware is just adding another layer of garbage.
Okay, fascinating.
So what I usually tell people is if you have more than 10 point-to-point integrations, you're probably starting to build yourself a maintenance nightmare.
Mm,
Think about it this way, like if you're building point to point and your other vendor changes their API Workday changes their stuff every 6 months.
yeah, yep,
What are other SaaS vendors doing? Some are doing monthly, some are doing bi-monthly.
yeah,
You're gonna end up playing whack-a-mole with
yeah,
point-to-point integration. So at least you have that single orchestration layer that you can see what's talking to what.
yeah, yep.
Here's the first things first part though. Before you buy middleware, gotta document what you have. I've walked into organizations that had no idea how many integrations were running. Like literally could not give me a number. And I've done some side work. I've had a couple gigs, and when you're dealing with a client that can't, I don't know how many integrations I have. If you can't inventory it, you can't orchestrate it at all. So
Absolutely.
here's what I tell customers or partners or friends that are working on this stuff. Map it first, rationalize it second, orchestrate it third, crawl, then walk, then run.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, and we just went through the public cloud migration not too long ago.
I
So
got to pick your brain about that.
yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I had to go through that entire process, that whole exercise of, trying to document where our integrations are, where they live, what fields are being delivered, maps, whatever, and just trying to make sure that I was communicating with all of these vendors. That
Do you remember off
was,
the top of your head how many integrations you have?
oh my gosh, it depends, right? But we had somewhere in the ballpark of like 40 to 50. And, a good chunk of those are just automations, just boomerangs, stuff like that,
Benefits,
right? Yeah,
automations,
exactly.
Outlook, getting
Yeah.
your Enter ID and all
EIBs,
that
quick
set
little
up,
EIB,
EIBs.
integrations. Yeah. So we had a lot of those, kind of tiny ones, but then we also had big ones like our ServiceNow integration that fed our demographic information from Workday to our IT system.
Mm,
So yeah, just trying to coordinate all of that was hard, right? But
yeah.
I was also documenting almost for the first time all of our integrations, right? So that just added an
Which is
extra layer of
fantastic. You gotta do it, though. You
yes,
gotta do it. At least you have that framework of this is what we're doing.
yes.
I like to one of the things I've done in the past is draw a picture.
Yeah, okay.
Because if you can draw the picture and show people how many crazy spider web lines are going out,
Yes.
you start to build a case for middleware.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
this at Merck, actually. We draw the picture and there was 740 some odd lines. It was
Wow.
ridiculous, point to point.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
first thing out of our mind, okay, we got to go middleware.
yeah,
This is too much. All our payroll vendors move over to middleware. And all the initial syncing up of systems and giving people access, all that moves over to middleware.
yeah,
Yes, we still have the major point-to-point integration, all the benefits integrations move over to middleware. Yes, we still have a couple major point-to-point integrations, ServiceNow, Phenom, any experience layer stuff that we might have, but the details, 80% of it was middleware after 18 months.
wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's amazing. And like from a sustainability perspective, right?
So much
If
easier.
those APIs change on either side, right, you're in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. I love that a lot. And honestly, I think that's the vision that I can see, but I really, really wanted to pick your brain about that specifically
Got to get there.
because
Got to walk. Got to crawl,
yes.
walk, and then run.
Yeah, yeah. But one point that I don't want to overlook here is the visualization aspect of things, right? Like that's the going from individual contributor or like analyst to an architect, right? Like quick little tips like that, being able to
You know,
communicate in a way that makes sense to business leaders is like fascinating to me.
yeah, it's funny. I was at Magellan Health, and I got to call. I'll call out a leader. Her name was Gabby Vandermark. She did not know Workday. This was her first HRS leader job, and she's a person who said, "Draw the picture," because I don't
Really?
understand.
Okay.
Help me draw
Yeah.
the picture, and that changed things right off the bat from an architect perspective. Because if you're drawing the picture, you're taking something that is very complex and technical, and then explaining it to leadership in a way that, oh, okay, there's 700 lines here. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why are we
Right.
doing it this way?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's definitely being filed in the back of my head here. I love that so much. Okay, so let's talk about maybe like not necessarily a topic that is like my absolute favorite, but I'm really curious to hear your perspective on all this. So, data governance, right? Or maybe even governance in general. How can getting this governance model correct help organizations move with agility? Because in my brain, sometimes governance means red tape, right? So, what's a correct way to look at that? And how do we know that we got it right?
Yeah, good question. This is my soapbox, and I will not apologize for it. Okay, data governance. Honestly, the single most boring important thing in HR tech.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about it at conferences. Nobody puts it on a slide deck, but it is literally the foundation for everything else.
Mm,
I'll give you an example. You want
yeah.
AI? AI is only as smart as the data you feed it.
Hmm.
You want analytics? Your dashboards are only as accurate as your data.
Mm,
You want to move fast? You can only move fast when you trust the data underneath you. If you're in a meeting with senior leadership and they are arguing your turnover numbers, getting your data governance right is really important. I think about 2 months ago, this was a Justin one, I wrote a piece called The Unsexy Strategy, and the whole thesis was don't buy any robots until you clean up your room. So when I wrote that, I was again explaining it to my son, and we were having a conversation, and he said he made the salsa comment. So there's a comment in that about pouring salsa in the car, and he's like, well, it's like if you poured something that doesn't belong in the gas tank, like sugar in the gas tank. And I was
yeah.
like, how about salsa?
Yeah.
And he's like, that's absurd. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's funny, isn't it? So yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff that goes on in our conversations when I'm getting my butt kicked at ping pong in the
I love
basement.
it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, it is it feels so counterintuitive to think of governance in that way because, yeah, when you're in the weeds, it's
It's so
another
slow.
obstacle to walk around or to follow, right? But in a lot of ways, it's also one less decision or a couple less decisions to make.
It
It
is.
almost frees your people up to stay within a designated lane to a certain extent and
Mhm.
be able to move quickly within that lane. So I love that. I love that. But obviously, that's a much more rosy picture of what governance actually looks like in
And
practice, right?
it's dirty, it's messy, it's complicated, it is ugly, it is slow.
Yeah.
The wonderful part about it is if you get it right, the stuff that you're doing on the back end is much easier.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. And I can definitely see that, especially within your writings. You make reference to a couple, maybe previous decisions that don't feel like decisions anymore. That's just the way that things get done. Right.
Mhm.
And I pull those, like those catch my attention a lot because those haven't necessarily been the examples of organizations that I've worked at before. Right. So I do notice those and I do get a little bit jealous. And it's just extra motivation for me to raise my hand and say, hey, we should probably make a decision around this.
Well, we've had some bangers. Let me
Yeah.
tell you.
I'm
Let me
sure.
tell you. Single primary recruiter, that was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And by
Oh
fun, I
my
mean really
gosh.
absolutely miserable because we had like 20 primary recruiters assigned to a
Yes.
rec. And then, oh, now we have to do one. So now we're EIBing all these old recs.
Yes. Yep.
But sometimes you got to clean your room.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of passion around these recruiters and their security role. I can tell you that. So I
Well,
love that.
it, probably going to give away a little bit of a dirty secret here, but when we had 20 primary recruiters on Rex, what we had was a total mess. And nobody knew what who's the recruiter who owns it? Who's this? Like,
Yes.
how do we make sure and then we also had all these other recruiting roles that we were assigning to Rex and not assigning to orgs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So here's what that created. It was a huge landmine. Not only did we have all the foundational work of re-EIBing every single rec that was ever touched for the last 2 years in a retail organization, over 300,000 employees. So we're talking about millions of requisitions.
Oh my gosh.
So we also had millions upon millions of role assignments that were breaking all the assigned roles reports downstream.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So we had to clean all that out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, and you're working at such a large scale too that these like seemingly minute decisions, at such a smaller scale make an incredibly massive difference, right? At your scale,
Bad
right?
architecture breaks at scale.
Yes.
Bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of the process of growing is learning,
Oh
at
yeah.
what points
What
those
time you
break,
broke
right?
it?
Exactly, exactly right. So yeah, it may not necessarily make sense to rush to those decisions, before hitting that yourself, but in a lot of ways, you do want to prevent those headaches, especially if you have the time and the resources and the vision to see those coming, downstream, right? Okay, Michael. So you are well known around the ecosystem for your hot takes, and I love them because I would say that they're almost rare, right? Like, they're rare from the perspective of someone being able to kind of say, like, here's what I see coming, and someone being willing to share that is fascinating as well, right? So I do want to review some of your hot takes because,
Sure.
some time has passed and I would love to get maybe an updated hot take or two, or maybe even some updated context from your end as to
Sure.
what has
Absolutely.
gone on in the ecosystem. So the first one is you had recommended to stop thinking like an IT leader and to start thinking like a product manager. So can you go into the key differences of each of these roles and what it means to be a product manager for Workday, at least in your opinion?
Using my own words against me, Christian. All good.
I'm so excited for this.
So the difference to me is orientation. If you think about it this way, an IT leader's default question is it stable? Is it secure? Are we in policy? All important questions.
Yeah.
Cannot be dismissed.
Yeah. Yep.
But a product manager asks a different first question. And that question is, does anybody actually want this?
Mm,
What problem does it solve for the end user? In my experience, when you manage Workday like an IT system, you optimize for uptime and compliance, right? You manage it like a product, you're measuring adoption and value.
Yeah.
You start thinking about employees as users, you start measuring satisfaction, you let go of ticket closure rates. It's not that IT thinking is wrong. In my mind, it's just incomplete.
Yeah.
The people that I look up to, the people that I think that are some of the best HR tech leaders, they have like a foot in each world, right? One foot in
Yeah.
IT
Yeah.
governance, one foot in product management. They'll be able to talk SLAs in the morning and user experience in the afternoon. It's not stop thinking like an IT leader as much as it is continue thinking like an IT leader, but also bring in this different framing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. So I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent here because this is
Mm-hmm.
a little bit nerdy, but I love getting to watch Anthropic, which is the company behind the AI tool Claude.
Mm-hmm.
I love getting to follow some of their product managers because I feel like, their technology is amazing, right? Claude is awesome. I love getting to use Claude. But I think what is being overlooked here is the way that they're doing product management and maybe have slipped on a new way of doing it, at least something that might work for them. But I've noticed that the feedback loop of releasing a feature to get feedback on that feature so that you can then use that feedback to improve the
Mm-hmm.
direction of that functionality, that loop is just getting significantly smaller, right? um and I feel like that in a lot of ways that's the north star of a product manager, right? Is design a feedback loop, right? Use that
Mm-hmm.
feedback to improve the product and then see if there's ways to kind of shorten that loop, right? And get closer to that feedback
Yeah,
so that you can move with some agility there.
exactly.
So anyway, I just wanted to call that out.
No, love it.
Boris Cherney is the one person. I think he's leading the team for Claude Code specifically, and I'm listening to everything he's saying, but I'm also watching how him and his team are moving, and it's just so fascinating. So I just wanted to toss that out there in case that was helpful at all.
Another person you should look at, Phil Wilburn from Workday. He's the
Oh,
Workday guy,
okay.
head of data analytics.
Yep.
Phil is a product guy. I learned a lot from Phil. I was lucky enough to go to a Workday Customer Experience Center visit last year, and they sat us down in front of Phil, and his whole product mindset is, especially from data and analytics perspective, about surfacing insights versus data, was
Yes.
fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, I
Absolutely
love that.
fascinating.
I love that. I'm definitely going to keep that name in mind. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Uh, All right. So another hot take that you had here, and I quote, your most important skill isn't configuration. It is childlike curiosity. This, I put in my notes here. This is absolutely fascinating in so many ways. Can you elaborate what you mean by curiosity and why that specific trait matters more than configuration even?
Yeah, so I learned this through the lens of my son and 3D printing. The story goes very simply is that this is last year, first day of fifth grade, my son comes home and he's like, I want a 3D printer. I need a 3D printer. His whole world became about getting this 3D printer.
Mm,
He consumed every freaking YouTube video there is about 3D printers. I know more about guys who live stream 3D printing stuff than I know about any video game whatsoever, because he
yeah.
just got so like dialed into this that it was absolutely incredible to watch the level of curiosity. I guess what I'm trying to say is curiosity doesn't have a ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the people who stand out to me in the ecosystem are the ones who say why before they ask how. Why does this process still exist? Why are we collecting this
Fascinating.
data? Why does the business actually need this report? And the curiosity part obviously is important, but the childlike part matters too, because kids, they're not afraid to ask dumb questions.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
One of the things that I've learned that in our world, there's so much pressure to be right and be the expert that we stop asking the basic questions.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they're the ones that uncover the problems.
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Uh, it- One more thing about this. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a requirement session and asked, why do you need the field? And the answer has been so many times that "So we have always had it. That's not a requirement. That's an
Yes.
artifact." And
Yeah.
the curiosity is what separates the two. It helps you tell
Yeah.
the difference between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, curiosity from that childlike perspective, right? Like there's this absence of like, avoiding it because it's going to make you look like a fool, or like a newbie, all that stuff is just it's not present within a child, they're going
The
to ask the question no matter what because
voracious
they,
consumption occurs when
yes,
they're interested.
exactly. I love that. I'm so glad that we got to clear that up because that's even sweeter, in my opinion, than your original quote. So thank you for that. Okay, so this one is a super spicy one. And I am so curious to hear how you'll respond to this one. So
Mhm,
this happened during Workday Rising of 2025.
mhm.
So you said, quote, the business process configurator is obsolete. Today, Workday showed us the new game, building AI agents. So this quote happened almost 6 months ago, probably a little bit more than that. What's remained the same about this quote and what's changed with this take?
Good question.
Okay.
Directionally, that's where we're headed.
Okay.
When I wrote that, I was so pumped up on Workday AI that I thought, okay, this is going to be 6 months from now. I think the timeline was a little optimistic,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
but I don't think the vision has changed at all. I think Workday is moving towards a world where AI handles orchestration and all the click through the business process stuff and all that starts to fade away.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, and if you see what's really happening in front of you, the Sana acquisition, FlowWise, the agent demos are rising, it's a pretty clear signal. What's changed, I think, is my appreciation for how long the transition is going to take.
Yes.
We're literally, in what I've learned since then is we're talking about replacing the operational backbone about how thousands of organizations run HR.
Yes.
It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen in 12 months. So today, right now, configurator, not dead. Call it on notice, I guess. We
Yeah.
still need people to maintain and build and maintain business process. But if you're a practitioner and you're not learning APIs and agents and experience layer, you're essentially building skills for a shrinking surface area, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And I think too, just like you said, it's going to be a transitional type of process, right? I could make the argument that the technology is already there, but is the auditing log there? Is the compliance portion there? Is the security aspect and the authentication aspect, are those parts there at an enterprise level? I don't think so. Not right. Not yet, right?
Still to come, I think, on their way.
Hmm.
I guess I wrote a piece about 3 months ago, and it was the piece that got the most engagement that I've ever seen. It was about Sana and about how there was how I liken Sana to a $10 Minecraft skin.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Obviously, you put a skin on in Minecraft, doesn't make you run faster, doesn't make you stronger. It's not armor. It's not a it's not a diamond sword or a netherite armor or anything like that. I swear to God, 11. I'm telling you, Christian.
It's
Just wait.
impressive. I love it.
Just wait. Just wait. You learn all this stuff.
I love it.
The reality is the skin is really shiny, but you still need to work on the game mechanics. And I think that's where we are. I
Yes.
think that's where we are. We
Yeah.
have nice, pretty skins. We're still working on the game mechanics.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I can see a world where us as Workday administrators, we may not necessarily be doing the configuration or, the setting up of this calculated field or this condition rule or whatever, but our judgment as to what the correct configuration is, that's not going anywhere. Right? And in fact, I can
Nowhere.
make the argument that it is going to become even more
More
valuable to
important.
organizations, right? So
Agree.
yeah, I think your statement was at a macro level, but I would make the argument that even at a micro level, individual Workday administrators just get good at configuring Workday, right? Like that is still the name of the game because whether you're the one doing it or whether you're the one checking that for an AI agent that is doing the configuration itself, like it's still
Still
going to
got
be
to know the
valuable.
details. Still got to know the core.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Okay, cool. I love that. So this last hot take here is, quote, the most important war in HR tech isn't about AI. It's the battle for your employee's front door. So actually in this piece, you go on to ask the readers like where they're placing their strategic bet. So I'm going to turn the tables a little bit on you and ask you, where are you placing your strategic bet at this point? And where do you think the front door of HR will be?
Oh, the front door I don't think is going to be owned by any vendor.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a constellation.
Interesting. Okay.
So the way I'm thinking about this is that an ERP, a core ERP like Workday, becomes a headless infrastructure. It's
Yeah.
the engine,
Interesting. Yeah.
payroll, compliance, the deterministic stuff that Anil was talking about. Like AI isn't deterministic, but it has to be
It has
deterministic,
to
and
be.
your paycheck can't be hallucinated.
Right. Definitely not.
So in my mind, the employee's not going to see the deterministic layer. It's going to be a conversational layer. It's going to sit outside. It's going to sit in the flow of work. Maybe it's an AI agent. Maybe it's in Teams or Slack. Maybe it's an experience platform. Maybe you're running four of those things. Maybe you're running a ServiceNow and Asana and whatever Workday Anywhere is going to become in the next 6 months
Yeah.
with Asana. Maybe it's a constellation. Maybe you run a customer experience layer or a candidate experience layer with a Phenom. I don't have a strategic bet anywhere.
Okay.
I have it on headless.
Okay.
No login screens, no
Fascinating.
navigation, no 17-step business processes.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I respect that the hedging of the bets, right? While also, still feeling very, very strongly in this one area that it's going to be headless, right? So I love that. And I think, we're recording this in late March of 2026. I think that's a very smart and even strategic place to be, right? Because there's just so much more that's left to be determined.
We've all been in the ecosystem long enough to see something get bought.
Exactly.
There's been
Exactly.
plenty of things that have gotten bought. There's going to be acquisition. There's going to be consolidation. There's going to be new players. There's going to be old players. Is Claude Code going to show up?
Right. Right.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't
Exactly.
know.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
the reality of the situation, in my mind, the reality of the situation is the experience layer is going to be conversational. You're not going to go to a place. There's not going to be
Yeah.
a destination.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally see that. I can totally see that for sure. Okay. So I know that we're running a little bit short on time here, right? But I do want to ask you this question because I feel like you have such great insight here. What is a general piece of advice that you would give someone listening who's just trying to, move forward within their career?
Okay. Tactical configuration work, building reports, maintaining business processes, loading EIB. AI is going to eat that first.
Yep.
Not tomorrow, but over the next few months and years, a lot of that gets agent assistant and automated. What doesn't get automated is judgment. Like
Yes.
you
Yep.
said, understanding why a process should work a certain way, knowing context behind security, being able to talk to a VP and say, I know you want this, but here's what's going to break.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trade-off, right? I wrote about and spoke today about product versus configurator. Yes, we're going to still be turning wrenches, but I think the wrench is going to get lighter and you're going to have to worry more about blueprints than wrenches. So
Love that.
so advice, fundamentals. You got to learn the fundamentals. But also start learning how to read API specs, understand how not the details, but how the basics of integrations. Start asking questions about experience layer. In my opinion, the ceiling for pure configuration knowledge is getting lower, but the ceiling for architectural thinking is unlimited, and that is the whole reason why I am still writing and
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing.
I love that. I love that. It's definitely, there's a layer of judgment there. And I think pretty soon we will see this in a much more clear fashion. There's going to be a layer of almost like artistry, right? Just being a good architecture and understanding where you invest your tokens, where you invest your attention, where you invest your energy. All of that is going to be this layer of artistry that is going to now become kind of a new skill that we call out within the ecosystem. I can totally see that. Totally see that.
The biggest things that you can do really quickly is to get uncomfortable.
Mm,
The next step in anybody's career isn't always do the same thing but with a bigger title. It's being okay with being bad at something. Like in my experience, I went from the guy who could build basically anything in the tenant to being the guy who had to sit in a room to convince a CFO to fund a project. It's a
yeah.
completely different muscle and it's
Yeah.
incredibly humbling.
Absolutely.
The second thing I would say is, and I don't want to encourage competitors, but right, LinkedIn, Substack, Wiki, it helps you clarify your thinking. Very recently, I wrote about the origin story of the department and how I started from being in a very spiteful place with one of my managers
Yeah.
to saying, hey, this is different now. It just forces you to clarify thinking. It forces you to build reputation. It opens doors that you never knew existed. Like, I started this whole thing because I was frustrated, but I had opinions and nowhere to put them. And
Yeah.
now I get to talk to a Commanders fan.
Yeah.
So I guess anything's possible. A Commanders fan in Reading? Come on, Christian. I had to give you a little
I
bit of
know.
credit.
I love it. Yeah. I grew up in DC. I moved up here for
Okay,
college.
then that's
So
fair. That's fair. That's fair.
no, but I love that. I love, and again, there's just so much overlap. Like I resonate with you so much because yeah, I think a big part, if I'm being honest, is this like constant pattern of feeling overlooked. And that's on me, right? Like
Mhm.
I feel overlooked. That's a me problem. But yeah, I think I knew that I
I
had
don't think it's a
perspective to
you
give.
problem. I think it's an HRIS problem.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah.
In my opinion, we are overlooked simply because our jobs necessitate always doing it right. And when everything is going right and you're getting paid correctly and your W-2 comes out on time and all the things and your benefit enrollment comes out, nobody notices.
Yeah. That's so true.
But when
That
stuff
is so
goes
true.
wrong, everybody notices. It's a hard thing to get over. So
Yeah.
so the one last point that I would make, don't invest in certifications. Build relationships. Early on in my career, I thought chasing the certs was the right thing to do. I got a PAP, I got a discipline as Agile Scrum Master, I got 4 Workday Pro certs. Not a single one of them is why I'm in the role that I am in today.
Fascinating. Yeah.
E- Every career change I've made, every leap that I made came from a relationship, a conversation, or a risk that had nothing to do with certification. The certs opened the door, I guess, but the relationships, the writing, the willingness to be wrong in public, that's what moves you through it.
Yes.
One of the things that I started doing was co-organizing the Philly Rug about 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Because community is where real learning happens. This is where real learning happens. I've learned so much from you today. It's amazing. It's not in a tenant. It's in a conversation with the person or people that are going through the same thing you are. So, in my opinion, just those are the 3 things you need to do for career-wise.
I love it. Perfect. We'll end on that note. But Michael, where can people connect with you in case they want to continue this conversation or pick your brain a little bit more?
Super easiest way is the newsletter. It's michaelpdomingo.com. It's Substack. I'm usually on weekly-ish. Sometimes I get a little angry and I post a little bit more often. I'm also on LinkedIn. You'll find me as Mike Domingo, who's always arguing about data governance. So that's how you'll know it's me.
I love it. Yeah. And now I have all of that linked in the show notes below to make it easy for everyone to find you. So, Michael, you are the best. I really appreciate it. I was really looking forward to this conversation and you did not disappoint at all. So, I really appreciate you.
Well, I was looking forward to it too, and thank you so much for the time, Christian. This is fantastic. Love it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. Be sure to check out the helpful links and resources mentioned in the conversation in the podcast show notes below. Also, be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter to stay in the loop about future podcast episodes and Workday tips. I'm Christian Delcid on LinkedIn and at cdelcid21 on Twitter/X. I would love to hear any feedback about how to make this podcast better, so be sure to subscribe, connect with me, comment, and share with others. Thank you so much again. Have a great day. The Unsafe Harbor podcast is my personal passion project, and it is completely separate from my role with my current employer or the Workday organization. The ideas expressed on this podcast are my own and do not represent my employer or the Workday organization.